information comes from. So let's just talk about something that's near and dear to your heart and service industry. So how many of you have a mobile phone? Okay, a lot of you. What's the average cost of the mobile phones around here? What do you pay? What do you pay for your mobile phone service? Under 50, 60,000 or $60 a month. Okay, multiply that by a year. Multiply that by 300 million people. This is a huge, huge business that has just come upon us in the last 10 or 15 years. When mobile phones were first invented by Motorola, they thought there was a market of 4,000 people for mobile phones. They thought only executives will have mobile phones. So big industry there. Here's another that are very far out there in terms of service innovation. I think I think certainly a lot of the work that Joe Pine did in the experience economy was based on hospitality-based businesses. You can learn a lot and see it manifesting in the way the competition, the competitive landscape is now in the hotel business. And certainly I think financial services are pretty advanced when it comes to services. And here's some services that need to be redesigned completely. Look familiar to you, you're hearing about them every day. Education, government, and healthcare. Pretty far behind, need to be completely reframed, go about it in probably the wrong way as it is, and we should be seeing some, hopefully expecting to see some headway in there. And then here's retail and transportation, also very, very big businesses that are, not exactly behind the times, but not exactly in front of the times either. So there's a tremendous size of this. I mean, this services economy is 80% of the GDP, and that amounts to over like $9 trillion. So it's really, really, really big. When I think about Zappos as a service company, I think about all retail in a service environment because they don't manufacture anything. They just provide the service for you to buy it. And so I think one of the distinctions is that you don't what you own is a product company, and what you rent is a service company. Those are the big distinctions there. So if you're renting the service, or if you're renting something, if you don't own it, then it's a service, basically. So this is what I thought we'd talk a little bit about today, just so you could really understand the landscape. This is pretty basic stuff, but I think you might find it interesting. And I invite your questions, too, as we sort of go along. I want to talk a little bit about the shift towards services, what that has looked like sort of historically. I want you to know the distinctions between services and products. One, because I want you, a lot of what you're learning today is going to be based on a product model. That's just the way things are. And I want to be provocative here and point out to you what's different about services so you can start getting in command of what's different about them and what's required to produce great services. And then I want to show you some projects that are not mainstream projects, things that you would never expect design methods to be applied to, that I feel very great about the work that we're doing at Peer Insight and some of these environments that really matter a lot. And then we'll go on to questions and so forth. So the first thing I want to talk about is how services got so big. So when I was in business school, when I started Harvard Business School in 1987, the product economy and the service economy were the same. We're like 50% of GDP. And the whole conversation in operations class was about products. It was about product development. It was about the Japanese beating our tail off and us having to get our quality standards up and that sort of thing. And in 20 short years, the service economy is now 80% of the entire GDP. Now, you've got to admit there's probably a lot of trumped up financial services in that 80% as it is, and I'd love to see after this year what it actually looks like, because I'm sure that is really true. But now it dominates the economy, and we think that because we had the quality revolution in the 90s, we also had all this re-engineering that went on. So as computers became more available and things got to be automated, people were really tightening down on their processes to make them more efficient. And so there was a huge wave in re-engineering that went on in the world. Now, that's gotten to its peak, right? In a lot of environments, you can't squeeze any more margin out, and you can't buy any more customers with being a more efficient organization. And that's where this innovation piece is coming together. So we see services dominating, we see innovation being one of the key disciplines. And I don't think anybody explains this better than Dan Pink. So who in this room has read A Whole New Mind? So I recommend you read it. It's a fabulous book. Dan is a really great writer. And he talks about, I think it's the first or second chapter, these 3 factors. First of all, abundance. He says there is so much available today. I mean, you can get anything you want 24/7 at whatever price point you can pay. And because there's so much abundance in the world, that companies that are serious about attracting users and providing great experiences have got to differentiate themselves. And this is going to cause them to be thinking about innovation in whole new ways. We also have the onset of the sort of Asian factor, which has two things actually going on in it. One is that we've got low-cost manufacturing going on. So the price of things has gone down, making them much more commoditized, while these economies are also rising. So we've got more people to sell to, services to, and that are going to be participating in the product economy. Their economies are rising as a result. The last thing is automation. And Dan says this in a great way, very simple. He says, anything that can be automated will be automated. Okay, so you think about the roles of machines in our life today. It's only going to get more automated as we sort of go on. And when you think about some of the skills that are required for innovation, these are things that computers can't do, right? It's pattern recognition. It's being able to put 2 and 2 together and come up with new skills. These are things that computers can't do. So I think Dan's right on. This is going to be a trend. It's not a trend. It's definitely here to stay, and it's only going to get more intense. But it's a shame that it's so emergent. Okay, here's another perspective that I gleaned from a venture capitalist. This is a very prominent venture capitalist in Silicon Valley. This is Kevin Fong. He says, any product that's not closely associated with the service today will be in 10 years. He says, we're not funding any products that are not associated with services. So why do you think he says that? Anybody? Why do you think he says that?
Buy another product, they want to buy also the experience.
They want to buy an experience, right? Yeah? Anybody else? Well, services can play a very, very strategic role when it comes to products. A lot of times the services have a higher margin than the product itself does. Okay, so that's one thing. The next thing is that they're recurring revenues. So you think about GM and how difficult it was for them to get OnStar going there. So some of the car margins might be the same amount of money as an OnStar subscription would be for 1 year. Some of the margins on some of the models could be $300 a year. That's the same cost as your OnStar subscription, but you're going to do that year after year after year after year, right? The other thing is, you think about data streams. Okay, data streams are very important in the scheme of things. They can be bought, traded, sold, turned into business models, used for competitive advantage, and so on and so forth. And so when Kevin Fong says that he's only funding products that are attached to services, it's for those very reasons, and probably more. This is what I want to talk about, that services and products are really different. And for you to understand services, you have to sort of understand what's different about them as opposed to products. And so I found this framework that was developed by Earl Sasser, who was a Harvard, I think he's retired now. Harvard Business School, when I was going to school there, had the most prolific group of professors writing about service management known to man, and they're all gone now, which is a very interesting commentary that they didn't have a set of people to come behind them. And my feeling about services and why it's not more. It's very unusual to have services in a business school. There's only one other business school that I know of, Arizona State, that has a great services program. And one of the reasons I think is that services don't fall into any kind of functional area, so that if you're a tenured, Leslie could talk about this, if you're a tenure track professor and you're trying to make headway in your function, you're not going to be, unless you're really, really good, be thinking about some multifunctional aspect, which services are. But in any event, here's the idea of the IHIP challenge. The IHIP stands for intangibility, heterogeneity, inseparability, and perishability. And these are the distinctions of services versus products as seen by Earl Sasser in 1979. And it's interesting to me today to think about this framework, which was developed without the internet in mind. So I was just thinking as I was going through these slides today, I should call up Earl Sasser and try to update the IHIP framework because I have found it so useful in trying to explain what the differences are and what you have to do in order to design great services. So let's just take the first one, okay? The idea is that services have no physical form, right? You can't touch them and see them before you purchase them, or you can't take them home, right? So when you go to Staples and you buy a printer, you go in and you can feel it and touch it and you can compare it to other printers, right? But when you're buying a service, you can't really do that. So when you buy a service, let me just ask, what makes you drawn to that service? What kind of thing draws you to that service? Whether it's a, it could be a cell phone service or, some other kind of service. What do you think about?
Convenience.
Convenience, yeah? What else?
Quality.
Quality, the quality that you're going to get, right? What else?
Price.
Price? Do you like some services over other services? Yeah, right? So in this domain, the idea is to make the intangible tangible. And so you see companies like JetBlue doing a fabulous job on customer experience management, where every single touch point of JetBlue is designed in such a way that you're having a very consistent customer experience, a very codified, that you understand who JetBlue is. These are impressions that are left in your head over and over and over again, right? So when I say Ritz-Carlton, you get one image in your mind, and when I say Holiday Inn, you get another image in your mind. And where does that all come from? This idea is very much based on brand building. So if you're in the services business, you're going to be very close to brand building, because this is how this is done. Brand intent is put together, touch points are designed to express brand intent. You're dealing with corporate identities across a broad spectrum of things. That sort of thing. So it's really dependent on those two things. Customer experience management, which is a whole new emergent science in and of itself. You can buy a lot of books on customer experience management from lots of different perspectives, but this is not taught anywhere, as far as I can tell. So it's, when I go about to try to do customer experience management programs with my clients, it's all based on case studies. It's all sort of cobbled together. There's absolutely no textbook on customer experience management at this point. There's thought leaders, there's articles, there's books, no textbooks. So it's not really taught. I mean, do you have a customer experience management class here, or does any business school have it? No. So customer experience and brand building, really important in this domain. So here's another idea, heterogeneity. So unlike products, tangible products, which have certain kind of operating aspects, no two service deliveries are ever the same. And you think about this experience of like buying a wedding dress. Suppose you're going to Saks Fifth Avenue to buy a wedding dress, and the whole idea, every bride is different. Everyone wants their own special experience for their wedding, right? So if you're the seller of wedding dresses, you have to be in the business of anticipating all the different breeds of buyers that are coming into your domain to buy wedding dresses. And what does that require you to do? Anybody?
In terms of what?
In terms of providing a consistent experience.
Well, I mean, you have to have a large availability of products. So
Well, you would have to have availability of products to fit, all kinds of different body styles, surely. I'm thinking more about the service aspects of it.
you have to have a really well-trained staff.
Very well-trained staff, right? So the idea about this particular point is that you want to have consistency where consistency makes sense, and you want to have variability where variability makes sense. And so from a consistency standpoint, you want to be in the mode of training your staff. So you have to be thinking about human resources in a way that is not required in the product domain, because you really don't. I mean, I never uttered the word change management the entire time I worked at IDEO for 7 years, or the 3 years I worked for another design firm. Never entered my mind change management. In service innovation, you're talking about change management all the time, because the organization is the factory, and to change something, you have to change, how the service is getting out the door.